Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that. It's Jonathan Baylor and Carrie Brown talking to you about living the smarter science of slim.
We are talking about FAQs.
More FAQs.
Frequently asked questions.
We love FAQs.
They're questions that are frequently asked to us.
And I love to answer them. I love because it's very real.
Yes.
This is, we're not making up stuff you want to know. We are actually answering stuff you want to know.
I bet they're interested in this. No, this is from you. So,
and if you've been listening for any length of time, I'm all about being real.
Yes. Speaking of real, I want to talk about real athletes. And I know we don't really talk about athletics very much at all on this podcast, and because of that, there's some questions around. What about athletes? Does a sane lifestyle and an eccentric lifestyle apply the same way to athletes as it would to a non-athlete? And the answer is no, it doesn't, because an athlete is not the same as a regular person, so it's very, very different. Just like an athlete trains differently than a normal person, an athlete also needs to eat differently than a normal person. And just like a golf player would do different things than a shot putter, same thing applies with diet and exercise. So sane eating is not the same for athletes as it is for regular individuals, nor is eccentric exercise. Let me do a high-level overview of the differences. So with athletics are skill-specific sports, right? Like if you want to learn how to shoot a basketball, you should practice shooting basketballs. I know this is I'm going to drop some knowledge on our listeners here.
I thought you were going to come out with something really profound then. And I was just getting ready to learn something. And then you said, shoot basketballs.
Well, but I mean, people...
You're awesome.
Lose. So when you do eccentric training, it will make you better at eccentric training, and it will make you stronger and healthier in general. It's a bit like... if you're smarter, you take a philosophy class and it makes you smarter, you'll be better at everything, and that's great. But if you want to become a great accountant, you should take accounting classes. It's a very specific skill. If you want to learn how to become a heart surgeon, you should practice doing heart surgeries. Being good at calculus will make you smarter. That's good, but it won't make you a better heart surgeon. So doing eccentric training will make you healthier. It will make you stronger. It will make you more cardiovascularly fit, which a lot of people don't know, but is very much demonstrated by the science. However, it will not make you better at hitting baseballs. It will not make you better at hitting golf balls, and it will not make you a better marathoner. Those are all sports-specific skills which you should train for in a sports-specific way. Make sense?
It makes absolute sense. It's always also reminded me how I will never be doing any of those things. But I understand that there's people out there who need to know this stuff.
And for eating, the biggest difference here is, and it's actually not that different. So the foods that are sane for non-athletes are still sane for athletes. There's a couple things here, and I don't want to geek out too much because I don't think a lot of athletes listen to our podcast, because there are specific podcasts for athletes. But athletes are much more active than everyday people, so athletes just need to eat more. So my recommendation for athletes is to double down on your whole food natural fats. So things like coconut, things like cocoa, chia seeds, flax seeds, some nuts, seafood. Just go to town on that stuff. And even if you're an endurance athlete, I did a bonus podcast with Ben Greenfield, a wonderful triathlete, a couple weeks ago. And researchers Volek and Finney have a book called The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance. It's brilliant. Lots of emerging research around how this idea that you need to carbo load on starches and sweets is just false. It's just biomechanically false. You do not need to do that for your muscles to function, but you do need to take in more energy because you're expending more energy. So for optimal performance, you might need to do that. And for explosive movements, so for athletes such as football players or power lifters, your body uses different, let's call it, sources of energy for different things. Like if you've ever heard of the movie like Fast and Furious or any of these kind of, race car kind of movies where they have the car runs on gasoline, but you can give it the NOS or the nitrous and it will go faster for a very short period of time. The body works similarly. We we run, but if we need to expend a massive amount of energy really quickly, our body is going to use quote unquote sugar to do that. So before someone performs an explosive exercise, eating simple sugars in the form of fruits, for example, would be fine for you. And if you need to recover from intense exercise, eating things like sweet potatoes or things we wouldn't normally eat can be beneficial. But these are very specific individuals with very specific goals. And so for us, for the people listening to this podcast, for Carrie, for myself, we really don't need to worry about this. The takeaway, though, is that if you are an athlete, or maybe you have a son or a daughter or a niece or a nephew who's an athlete, they're going to need to do things slightly differently, but it's not a far departure. It's a slight tweak on sanity. Basically, it's going to be a little bit more whole food fats, be continued to have your high quality protein, and maybe a little bit more of higher sugar fruits and a little bit more of nutrient dense starchy vegetables such as sweet potatoes.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Cool beans. So next one, gastric surgeries.
Yikes.
Bum, bum, bum. So like lap band, all that kind of fun stuff. So Carrie, before I get into my science-ness.
No, I have never had the lap band, Jonathan.
Well, no, that's not what I was going to ask you, but I was wondering if you had thoughts.
Thoughts?
And it is a touchy subject, right? Because usually, I mean, this is a last resort for individuals oftentimes, so.
Thoughts are, most of what I've read about them is that long term they absolutely don't work, and a lot of them are very, very dangerous.
So yeah, I'm going to speak less about efficacy or lack thereof, just because I think maybe looking at it, we talked in a previous podcast about the professor who lost 27 pounds eating Twinkies and blah, 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 blah. And I think I want to change the dialogue about gastric surgeries, because like, what is gastric surgery? Gastric surgery is making your stomach smaller. I mean, it's technically not, there's different ways to do it. I get that. But basically it allows you to eat less food. Okay. The amount of food we're eating is not the problem. So if you ask me what I think about them, my first question would be if you're an individual who has a food addiction and cannot control yourself, well then physical intervention may be needed, but it's truly a last resort. It would be like taking an alcoholic and tying their hands behind their back, because that's the only way to get them to stop drinking alcohol. Like it's obviously not the solution to the problem, because they cannot walk around for the rest of their lives with their hands tied behind their back. However, there may be times, like we've all had times when we're just like, we're a little bit off the ranch and someone literally needs to hold us and say, stop. Right? So I think there's a moment in our lives, and it may not be for food, it may be for some other issue where we really need a physical intervention. And that's when we talk about gastric surgeries, it is a physical intervention. We're literally saying you can no longer put this food in your stomach, and if you do, like, you can die. So it's just kind of raising the stakes a little bit. I don't know, it's a little bit like sprinkling arsenic on insane foods in your house. So it's like, well, if you eat it, you're gonna die, so you better not eat it. I would encourage us to, and I'm being hopefully folks, I'm being sensitive here, because I know this is a very sensitive subject for individuals, and I know people personally who've had terrible experiences. I have a coworker right now who's going in to have a lap band reversed, because if you saw this individual, she didn't look particularly healthy before she had the surgery, but now she looks even worse. And from an emaciation perspective, like she literally can't eat food, like they broke her body. And so it's not a pretty thing. But I also know another individual who it was their saving grace, because it enabled them to get control, like they were just out of control, and it forced them to be like, stop. And then they were able to move forward. So I think for some it can be very valuable. I think it's a last resort. And I think before we head down that last resort, we have to say the issue is not the quantity of food you're eating, it's the quality of food you're eating. And if we don't solve that problem, then, so let's say we don't solve that problem. If we don't solve that problem, then I am against gastric surgeries. Because if the point of the gastric surgery is to force you to eat less, of an already nutritionally inadequate diet, that will kill you. It is making you malnourish yourself. It is forcing you to malnourish yourself. So the answer is not take a nutritionally inadequate diet and force someone to eat less of it. It is, let's do everything we can to just eat a more nutritionally adequate diet and let the body heal itself. I mean, get a counselor, get a buddy to follow you around for a week and help you. I mean, it's just, there's, please, before you physically alter your body in a potentially irreversible way, just try to eat so many non-starchy vegetables, so many whole food fats, and so much nutrient-dense protein that you're just too full for the other stuff. And then if you're still craving the other stuff, just try Carrie's recipes. Freaking muffins she makes are fantastic. Like, I promise, like, you can't eat the things that Carrie's making and not just say that's fabulous. It's delicious. So, sorry, I'm rambling here, but I've seen really bad things happen with these. I've also seen really good things happen with them, and I just think if they're presented to you as here's a way you can eat less, then obviously I'm against them. But if they're presented as a last resort to someone who just cannot get control, then maybe. But only, let's put it this way, someone who has a gastric surgery, it is even more important for them to go sane because now they can't eat a lot of food. So the food they eat has to be like 5-star sane.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to malnourish themselves. They're going to break their metabolism. And then they're, I hate to use this word, but then they're really screwed. Like if you make your body such that it will run on 800 calories per day, if you ever stop eating 800 calories per day,
you're going to put on pounds per minute.
Pounds! And you're going to be super unhealthy because it's incredibly hard to get sufficient nutrition. When I say nutrition, I mean like vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids in 800 calories per day. You're going to have to eat so sanely that it might make you insane because we all need a little bit of insanity in our lives. So I just, man, when you go into that gastric arena, you're playing for keeps because if you do it, it's even more important that you change food quality. And I would argue that if you could change food quality, you wouldn't need to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, to summarize, you either change food quality and potentially don't need to have it done, or you have it done and change food quality anyway, or you have it done, don't change food quality, and you will end up worse off than if you never had it done.
You will. You'll end up worse off than that. It's very sad. I was actually I don't have TV, as you know, but I was at a friend's house over the holidays, and we watched a show about a morbidly obese woman who could not get it under control, and she had the surgery, and not much longer afterwards she died, and it was she left 6 daughters. It was the saddest thing. But of course, reducing the quantity was not the thing that was going to make the difference.
Yeah, and it is, but I do think it is a useful analogy. Like there are individuals who are addicted to food, and if you are addicted to drugs, sometimes you have to go into a facility where they prevent you from getting access to them. But
they still have to fix the psychological addiction.
Yeah.
It's the addiction that's the problem. I mean, I get that you have to cut off the supply of drugs or alcohol or whatever, or gambling or whatever it is, but you still have to fix the addiction, which is emotional, psychological, mental, whatever it is. And if you don't, they could be in rehab forever. When they get out, they're gonna go back to where they were.
Yeah, so it's really, and that's, Carrie just nailed it, many less words than it took me, and that's, if you want to be healthy and fit, you have to solve the underlying problem. And if getting a gastric surgery enables you to do that, then do that. But if you do that in an attempt to, like, bypass fixing the actual problem, you're just going to be worse off than if you never had it done, so...
Eat sane food.
Eat sane food.
Yay.
And let's get happy again, because that was a more serious, sad portion of the podcast. We're gonna be happy now.
Yes, well, I'm genuinely just desperately sad for people who are in that situation.
Especially, and I think a lot of them just don't know about this alternative. They just think they have to stop eating food, because that's what we're told, right? We're just told, just stop eating food. Just, what's your problem? Just stop eating food. That's ridiculous. Like telling a smoker, well, just stop breathing. What do you just stop breathing? Just breathe less. What's your problem? No, it's not that I'm breathing too much. It's that I'm breathing in the wrong things. Oh, but no one told us that for food.
Eat sane, be happy.
I love it. I love it. Well, on a happier note, Carrie, I wanted to share with you a secret.
Uh-oh.
So I have been doing my own.
Newsflash, Jonathan Baylor's secrets.
I've got a secret. So my secret is that I've been doing my own little experimentation in the kitchen.
Oh, heaven help us.
And I have come up with, per your recommendation, around some. I never really used baking powder before, so I started using baking powder, and I started using guar gum. And I've come up with a sane pancake recipe that.
Please tell me it's infinitely better than your last one. Please.
Well, again, it's not really fair here, because this is amateur talking to a professional. But so let me tell you briefly about my sane pancake recipe, because it is very, very good. So,
yeah, Jonathan, your interpretation of good when it comes to food and mine are miles apart.
It is true. But so for those listening to the podcast who define good the way I define good, which also has to do with like ease of preparation and things like that. So here's what I do. So I'll use either eggs or egg whites, depending on my goals for that meal. And I will use coconut, totally unsweetened coconut. And I will use a casein based protein called UMP, which is available in the Sane store, which is yummy. I use actually the cookies and cream flavor. And then I use vanilla. I use cinnamon. I use baking powder, and I use guar gum, and I use some xylitol, and I need some water.
He's a convert, people!
Yep.
Yay!
And I put that in the Vitamix for 2 minutes, because of like the coconut is not is relatively large, and it turns it into a complete liquid. Put some coconut oil in the pan, put that on there. Is good eating, Carrie. I had Angela try it. She was like, get those away from me, because I'm about to eat all of your pancakes. They were good. They were really good.
All right, I'm going to have to make them now.
And there was no syrup necessary, because, you can just put enough xylitol in it to make it however sweet you want. And it was...
Because let me tell you, people,
good.
his first pancake version, oh my Lord.
I thought, I can even expound upon this. And then you can make chocolate pancakes. You just add cocoa to the recipe. You generally add a little bit more xylitol if you want them to taste sweet. But I'm telling you, Carrie, it's good. Watch out. You got some competition.
Yeah, like you have competition, me getting biceps like you. Yeah, okay, fair. That kind of competition. All right, bring it on.
Fair analogy. Well, and while we're talking about recipes, Carrie, I remember you were telling me, I think listeners might be a little bit interested in this, how the distinction of when you use flours, like a nut flour versus you sometimes use like sunflower seeds, and just when you use different flour-like substitutes and the reason you use the different ones. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Okay, well, why don't you try to make... So clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about here, so
right.
Help me communicate what I'm trying to communicate.
No,
or is it just this complete lost cause? The patient died on the table? Or can we bring in the expert?
I really don't know what you're talking.
You said I used, because I wanted this recipe to taste like fluffier than another recipe, so I used sunflower seeds instead of something else.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but there's no formula. I just make it up, and I just experiment with things, and I see if it works, and if it does, goodness, and if it doesn't, then I'll tweak it until it does.
But can you tell our listeners, for example, like you inform me, for example, like if you have a concoction you're experimenting with, like I'm not a big recipe. I still haven't done any of your recipes because I don't like being told what to cook.
Right, but you sure like to eat them when I make them, don't you?
But I like having guidance. Like, for example, if you want to sweeten something, xylitol is a good option. And I like to know, like, guar gum, if you want something to have, like, a little bit more of a consistency, a little bit more of a thicker feel to it, add some guar gum to it. Okay, I can do that. I can take that principle and apply it. So I was hoping, for example, you have, despite my repeated encouragement, not used coconut flour as much as I would like you to, because it has certain characteristics. So what I'm looking for...
Jonathan, there's a limited number of hours in the week. Coconut flour things is on my list. I just haven't got there yet.
But what I'm asking you to describe to our listeners, folks, you might have to talk about needing physical interventions here. No, I'm just kidding.
Jonathan, stop. Stop. You're getting the timeout sign here.
I'm getting the timeout sign? All right.
Baking's a science. What you do, generally speaking, is assembly. It's not cooking. It's not baking. And assembly and baking is very different. It's not as easy as switching out coconut flour for regular flour. They behave completely differently.
And that's what
coconut
I'm asking.
flour is like blotting paper. It sucks up liquid. Like,
perfect.
But I can't give you there is no formula. It's trial and error. That's why it's just easier for everyone to just go make my recipe, because I've done all the hard work. And if you want to spend days and days and days and days in the kitchen having failures, then go right ahead.
All right. Well, apparently, Carrie has all the proprietary information. Can't tell us what to do with it. Fine.
I'm just being practical.
What I learned from what Carrie
I'm just trying to save you all a lot of pain.
Is that coconut flour is more absorbent than other flours or something like that.
It's not more absorbent. It's like the Sahara Desert.
All right. Well, coconut flour. So
it also doesn't have the same structure as regular flour. It's just
moving on.
Look, Jonathan, you stick with the geeky science stuff that you're brilliant at, and leave the cooking to me.
All right. Okay. I will do that. So, moving on.
However, you're allowed to make your pancakes.
Thank you very much, and I'm very proud of my pancakes. So Lara bars, and more generally, there are these. I think most of our listeners will know the answer to this question, but there are these bars that are all natural. They're made with dried fruit.
They're maybe dates, most predominantly.
Dates, and they're all natural, and they've got recycled packaging, and therefore you're being an eco-friendly person when you buy them. Carrie, I think this is Carrie, TM Carrie Brown, trademark Carrie Brown. She made a point in an earlier podcast, which is look on the label. If it has double-digit sugar, don't eat it. It's just bottom line. Like, it's really that simple. Like, bar, shake, I don't care. If you look on the label and it has double-digit sugar, don't eat it. And if it has single-digit sugar, look at the serving size. And if the serving size is so blatantly not a realistic serving size, like if it's a half a cookie and it only has 5 grams of sugar, okay, well, and if you're going to eat 4 cookies, then it's really, the math there, I forgot the first number I said. But the point is, just look at the sugar content. That'll tell you all you need to know.
Not only that, though, if it's, if you're seeing sugar on the, how many grams per whatever, also look at the ingredients and make sure that none of that sugar is added sugar, i.e. honey or maple syrup or glucose or maltose or maltodextrin or whatever the heck. So it's not just because dates, Lara bars have no added sugars, no caloric sweeteners in there. So that's all goodness. So then you're just left with how much sugar are the dates providing. But that's different.
Yeah, and don't let the fact that it's in bar form somehow make it like, oh, this is better now. We generally, dried fruits are insane. They're generally higher sugar fruits with all the water taken out, and therefore, sanity is determined by water, fiber, and protein. So they're less sane, they're less filling, And if you put them in bar form, it doesn't make them any more sane.
Right. So the sugars are concentrated, I think is what Jonathan's trying to say.
Exactly.
So, and you'll know, and Jonathan too uses, a handful of raisins, or you'll notice I have cranberries in a lot of my recipes, but that we're not talking about you not throwing some cranberries on your salad to make it more delicious. That's all good.
Yep.
We're talking about eating, a cupful of raisins because you like them, or
just using them as a snack.
Right, or these bars that are essentially, dates seems to be the big thing in bars. That would be insane.
Exactly, and that's using them as a seasoning almost. Something with the cheese, like using cheese as a seasoning rather than like I'm going to eat cheese, and using dried fruit as I'm going to top this with dried fruit rather than
I'm going to eat a cup of raisins.
Eat dried fruits. Yeah, exactly. Same kind of thing. So, and I think that even like we talk about oils, like if using oil as a lubricant in a pan, that's fine, but don't eat tablespoons full of oil, right?
Right. And I admit, this confession time, I eat cheese. I mean, I just will eat slices of cheese, but I'm fully aware that in and of itself is insane. And so I mean, I do that consciously. I know the result that I'm going to get from doing that.
And let's be very clear, especially when it comes to cheese, there's two different paths of sanity that people can take, right? Because we've already said, we know we've got to eat our non-starchy vegetables, and we know we've got to eat our nutrient-dense proteins. And then there's whole food fats and low fructose fruits. So one could say there is a lower fat, higher fruit version of sanity, and then there's a lower sugar, higher fat version of sanity. So if you are doing a lower sugar, higher fat version of sanity, things like cheese would be fine for you. And if you're doing a lower fat, higher carbohydrate, for lack of better terms, version of sanity, then you might be able to eat more things like dried fruits and maybe even like a sweet potato every once in a while, something like that. But what you don't want to do is eat a bunch of high sugar fruits and a bunch of non-optimal fats. So pick one or the other. Carrie goes lower carb sanity. So just pick one and stick with it. Don't go high not optimal fat and high not optimal carb. If you do that together, you're not going to get very good results. So pick one.
So I can't eat a whole bunch of cheese and a cup of raisins at the same time?
Yeah, that would be suboptimal, let's just say.
Suboptimal.
Well, I do the same, and I do a lower carb sanity. So I don't eat any low sugar fruits just because I really enjoy eating my whole food fats, and I'll put a cup of coconut in my pancakes that I just mentioned and not think twice about it. And that just satisfies me more. But my wife, for example, does just the opposite. She really, really likes fruit, and that's fine. And I know a lot of people who really, really like a little bit more of this nutrient-dense starchy carbs, such as a sweet potato or taro, I don't know how to say it, but just be conscious. I think, if you prefer the lower carb, higher fat path, that's fine. Take that, but stick with it. And if you prefer the higher carb but lower fat path, that's fine, but pick one.
And I would just say, if you're like me and you're a huge cheese fan, just be aware and be honest with yourself that that's not going to further you towards your goal for that meal.
Well, I know.
That's what I mean. I just be aware of the fact that it's really insane on its own. But if you choose to do that,
well, I think I'm even giving you more hope here, Carrie, because what I'm trying to say is that there is a version of sanity where you could actually eat cheese. It just means you would have to be very, very sensitive to the amount of sugar you're taking in. So, for example, people who go on low carb, high fat diets, this is like a phase 1 of Atkins, and they're called low carb, high fat diets for a reason, because you're eating so few carbohydrate, like sub 50 grams of carbohydrate per day, and you don't need to eat more than a certain amount of protein. So you have to get the rest of your calories from fat. So you have to do things like eat cheese or put butter on things you normally wouldn't do. Otherwise, you have enough calories. So all I'm saying is that if you are actually really ambitious with your goals and you really like fat and you want to eat things like cheese, you can do that, but you just really, really, really need to watch out for the amount of sugar you're taking in. And I even mean like Greek yogurt might be an issue for you, because Greek yogurt, while it has very little sugar on the grand scheme of things, if you're doing high fat, low carb, it might become an issue in that context. So I guess I'm actually saying there's hope. So if you really like that stuff, that's fine. Just you need to be even more sensitive to sugars. And if your goals aren't ambitious, then you can be less sensitive to sugars. It's fine. But just wanted to put that ray of hope out there.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying be aware. Don't slip into denial about cheese is sane, or you know what I mean. That's all I'm saying is just be aware of what you're doing. Consciously make the choices you do.
Beautiful. Yeah,
that was my point.
Yeah, and I love what you said. And don't accidentally, don't eat apples and think, oh, it's fruit. No, I mean, that's a higher fructose fruit. And if you're gonna eat apples, that could be fine, but now you're gonna need to be more conscious of the other things you're eating if you want to continue to make progress.
Right.
So.
And if you're happy with where you're at, then it's all goodness.
And actually, that's the Uber rule right there. Carrie hit the nail on the head. If you're eating cheese and apples and you feel great and you look great and your numbers are great, then keep eating cheese and apples. And if you're eating cheese and apples and things aren't going the right way, well,
change something.
Stop eating cheese and apples and start eating more non-starchy vegetables and nutrient-dense protein. So all goodness. Well, Carrie, it's been a blast as always. Jonathan Baylor, Carrie Brown, we're eating more, we're exercising less, but we're doing it smarter, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Wait, don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast and if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff, like how to help your kids go sane and just great community content.
And just one last thing before you go, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes and up onto Amazon.com and leaving us a review, and then going over to Facebook and liking us, we would hugely appreciate it.